Today, we'll follow the journey of an old man who drifted onto a deserted island. No people, no waves, no food, just his willpower and a few batteries. While wandering for fun, he took one wrong turn too deep into the wild and ended up lost in untamed nature. No screaming, no panic, he chose to explore. With no climbing gear, he quickly tied together a few long, thin leaves into a rope, tied it to a tree, and climbed down. Even though hanging on this makeshift rope was more dangerous than 1,000 pounds hanging by a thread, he moved smoothly, as if water was flowing or clouds were drifting. Before long, he was already at the bottom. He felt proud, at his old age. He still had such remarkable skills. He kept making his way down the slippery slope. One wrong step would send him to his ancestors, but no, he survived, and stumbled upon an abandoned house so old even the wind seemed unwilling to stop by. His supplies? Just a few batteries, a torn waxed life jacket, and a couple of fishing hooks, poverty-level survival gear at its finest. So he headed to the beach, searching for sharp rocks to craft tools like a primitive blacksmith, cutting leaves, weaving baskets, doing everything with ease. Maybe he wasn't the brightest student in school, but when it came to weaving, he must have been top of the class. Then he discovered a bunch of wild berries. He tried one, and his face lit up like someone who just found free Wi-Fi. After realizing he didn't die, he went ahead and picked a whole basket full. His shirt pocket worked like Doraemon's magic pouch. It could hold everything. As he kept wandering, he found clean water. He scooped it up and drank it straight, no filter, no boiling, yet he was fine. A bit further, he came across a wild peach tree with fruits so black they looked rotten, but surprisingly, they tasted amazing. So he had himself a seaside breakfast that felt more like a vacation than survival. He even found wildflowers, berries, and strange nuts, if it was edible. He tried it right away, cracking the shells and eating the nutty cores like sunflower seeds. As long as he stayed alive, everything tasted good. By the end of the day, he gathered a pile of clams and ate them raw, no grilling, no steaming, pairing them with fruits like some gourmet caveman. And just like that, his unexpected day of survival came to an end, but he wasn't the least bit confused. After enjoying the tasty wild fruit, the old man sat by the dreamlike beach, savoring the moment, when he suddenly noticed a curved branch that looked promising. He dragged it back, tied it with grass vines, and bent it into a circle. Then, using a stone, he carved a hole in the branch to make a frame for a wheel. Next, he carefully layered leaves, weaving them together like a true craftsman. With surprisingly skillful hands, the old man worked back and forth, weaving without pause. Eventually, after who knows how long, his first basket was finished. But with only one side completed, he went right back to work. Sitting leisurely in the cool shade by the shore, he stripped more leaves, tied them carefully to a smaller round branch, and wove another, smaller basket. Once it was done, he attached it to the bigger one, creating a simple fish trap lid. Satisfied, he carried the trap out to sea, grabbed a few wild clams, smashed them, and used them as bait. He even tied branches together to act as floating buoys, then placed a few stones inside the trap for weight. Using leaves as ties, he secured everything and happily waded into the ocean to set his trap. Finding the right spot, he sank the trap into the water, then returned to the shore to wait. A few hours later, he swam out to retrieve it. The moment he pulled it up, he felt its weight. Inside was a fish weighing about 5 pounds. It wasn't huge, but after going hungry since morning, it looked like a feast. The fish was still thrashing around, but he didn't want it to suffer. So, with a quick physical intervention using his teeth, he sent it peacefully to the afterlife. After that, he put his clothes back on and carried his hard-earned catch back to camp. Since the fish was still raw and smelly, he decided not to eat it immediately but to leave it overnight. The next morning, the first thing on his mind was fire. He found a dry log and used a sharp stone to drill into it, grinding and drilling until he carved out a small round hole in the wood. He fixed a small piece of wood into the hole to create a primitive spinning tool. Not stopping there, he went looking for a long, straight, dry branch. He carved the tip, then drilled another hole. When he was done, he headed to the beach to pick up a few suitable stones, using them to grind out a hole in the middle. The work wasn't easy, it demanded strength and patience. He kept spinning and blowing, until he finally drilled a hole through the center of the round stone. In the end, he pushed the stick through the middle, measured it against his hand, and it looked like he was piecing together some kind of old-fashioned handmade toy right there in the wild. Next, the old man quickly went over to a thorny wild pineapple bush. Instead of using a knife, he grabbed a stone and boldly operated on the tough pineapple leaves. With a few decisive cuts, he split them apart like a baker slicing dough. Then, he used the stone to scrape off the hard outer layer, just like peeling a giant pineapple. Once done, he split them again and scraped them a second time. Without resting, the old man hammered a wooden stake into the ground, tied the strips to it, and began working as if he were crafting handmade art. With rough yet skillful hands, he wove the fibers back and forth like a dance, eventually turning them into a strong, beautiful rope that could rival factory-made ones. After that, he used a stone to cut away the excess, as carefully as a tailor trimming a suit. Very quickly, he had successfully created a primitive wooden drill. It looked simple, but it worked like a charm. He immediately tested it on a piece of wood he had already prepared, almost like warming up the machine. Fitting the drill bit in place, he started working without hesitation. The result? After just a short while of drilling, smoke rose up like he was toasting rice paper. He gently lifted the cover, blew softly, and a tiny spark appeared, cuter than a Christmas Eve campfire. He gently placed the tiny spark into the bundle of dry grass he had prepared beforehand, puffed up his cheeks, and blew like he was blowing up a balloon. Suddenly, flames burst into life, blazing brightly, an absolutely satisfying result. Fire was ready. Now it was time for him to cook lunch like a true wilderness chef. Within minutes, the fire sizzled loudly, the fish cooked to perfection, and its fragrance drifted far enough to tempt other fish to jump in willingly. He picked it up and took a bite, crispy skin crackling in his mouth, tender flesh inside. The old man confidently declared that this flavor beat any five-star restaurant in the city. He sat there, savoring his simple yet top-quality lunch. Just looking at it made you want to steal a bite. He enjoyed every last taste down to the final morsel. After eating, he carried his trusty fish trap back to the shore to continue his hunt. This time, he used a few wild clams as bait. He tore them apart as if preparing a rare delicacy, then tossed them into the trap, setting up what looked like a seafood banquet invitation. He placed the trap in the water and stood by calmly, like a retired fisherman enjoying the day. While waiting, he noticed a school of small fish circling around, almost like curious spectators watching his cooking show. Then suddenly, the bait was taken. He carefully pulled the trap up, eyes gleaming, and to his surprise, it was full of fish. They were only a few ounces each, but there were enough for a feast. He quickly gathered his catch, placed them all into his handmade mini basket, and walked back to camp like a man returning from the supermarket. Without eating or drinking, he slept straight through until morning. The next day, he bent a few branches into two loops, one large, one small, almost like making necklaces for an elephant and a cat. Then, he sharpened several wooden sticks to a deadly point, sharp enough to hurt just by looking. Combining them with the two loops, he tied everything tightly together, quickly creating a simple but intimidating spiked trap. He set it right at the mouth of the fish trap, ensuring that once a fish swam in, there would be no way out. But he didn't stop there. He went on to gather several dry branches, split them in half, and used tree bark to tie them into a sturdy triangular frame. Then he layered more branches on top and secured everything tightly with rope. In no time, he had crafted a wild-looking kite. You couldn't tell if it was meant for flying or just to scare the birds away. When it was done, he headed back to the beach, picked up more clams, smashed them open, and tossed them into the trap like a master chef preparing the most delicate bait. Once again, the trap was lowered into the sea. While waiting, he pulled out the kite he had just finished, as if ready for a little after-work entertainment. Standing on the shore with the cool breeze brushing past, he let the kite fly high, drifting like he had returned to his carefree childhood. After playing to his heart's content, he walked back to the fish trap and slowly hauled it up. This time, only a few small fish were caught. It wasn't quite enough for a meal, but with a few snails stuck inside, it could still make do. As before, he set the trap again, hoping for a bigger catch. Hours later, when he checked again, the trap felt heavy. Excited, he quickly pulled it ashore, opened the lid, and found 4 large fish thrashing wildly inside. Their shiny white scales looked incredibly appetizing. Next, he picked up a piece of clam shell, smashed it with a rock until it was the shape he wanted, and began grinding it down. After many rounds of grinding, the shell had noticeably shrunk. Then he grabbed an old piece of rotten bone he had found earlier, split it in half with a stone, and kept hammering until he carved out a sharp shard that could serve as a cutting tool. By combining the sharpened bone with the clam shell, he was on his way to making a useful tool. He kept grinding the bone against the rock until it became razor sharp, then carved a groove at the back end and refined the point at the front. He planned to connect them together into some kind of primitive instrument. Along the way, he even swatted down a few pesky mosquitoes buzzing nearby. Afterward, he went looking for pine trees and collected some dried resin. Then, he picked a few wild pineapple leaves, stripped off the tough outer layer, and used a stone to scrape them down into fibers. Inside, the fibers were surprisingly tough and stretchy, perfect for making fishing line. He placed the pine resin into a clam shell, set it over the fire, and soon created a sticky, wild glue. Mixing in a bit of charcoal, he stirred it well. Next, he tied the sharpened bone to the polished clam shell using plant fibers, then sealed it with the natural glue. Just like that, he had crafted a primitive fishhook. He went on to gather more wild pineapple leaves, split them open, scraped away the outer skin with a rock, and wove them into a sturdy rope. Then he picked up a dry branch, cut it with a stone, tied it together with plant fibers, and quickly made something that looked like a mini ladder. He used it to neatly coil the rope he had just made. Afterward, he found a rotten wooden plank, trimmed off the decayed parts, and tied the rope to it. He crushed more wild pineapple leaves and, with his skillful hands, wove them back and forth, layer after layer, until he had made a wild hand-woven mat. Still not stopping, he collected more dry branches, smoothed the ends flat with a stone, and once again melted tree resin in a clam shell over the fire. Mixing it with charcoal, he stirred until it thickened into a kind of natural tar. He brushed it onto the smoothed branches, reinforcing them. Then he gathered a bundle of firewood and stacked it up. With all the tools he had created, it was time to assemble them into something bigger, an improvised boat. Crude in design but skillfully made, as the sun set in a breathtaking glow, he carried everything to the beach. Piece by piece, he connected them together, and soon, a one-man sailboat took shape. For weight, he used some of the stones from the fish trap, then smashed open clams to use as bait. Finally, he picked up the hand-woven sail he had finished earlier and fixed it onto the boat. The makeshift boat was finally complete. He dragged it to the sea for a test run. Sitting on it, not a single drop of water seeped in. The result was surprisingly good. He rowed a short distance and saw no issues. Satisfied, he nodded proudly at his creation. With this boat, he could now reach deeper waters to catch bigger fish, no longer stuck with the small ones. Drifting across the waves, he sat calmly as the boat floated further out. He took the sharpened bone and polished clam shell, fashioned them into a hook, and prepared to fish. Once he reached deep water, he dropped his fish trap into the sea, confident this spot would yield bigger catches. While waiting, he cast out several of his handmade hooks, using the smaller fish he had caught earlier as bait. In total, he set 3 fishing lines. For the last one, he even tied it to his leg, like a seasoned fisherman at work. Hours passed with no bites. Remembering the metal hooks he still had with him, he pulled them out and realized they were far better than the primitive ones he had crafted. So he decided to switch. The moment he cast the better hooks, a fish struck. He pulled up a white fish weighing about 3 pounds. Without hesitation, he snapped its neck for a quick end, rinsed it clean, and cast his line again. Luck struck twice. He hauled in another white fish. After a quick cleanup, he went to check the fish trap. But this time, nothing, not even a single fish inside. So he sat there, drifting on the open sea, the boat swaying gently under him. With the food he had and the tools he'd made, the old man now had everything he needed to survive until his very last breath. His journey was more than just a series of survival acts. Survival in the wild wasn't just about staying alive, it was living proof of the extraordinary strength of human will. Every knot he tied, every rope he wove, every crude tool he shaped was the result of persistence, creativity, and the courage to endure, amid harsh, unforgiving nature. With no words spoken and no help from the outside world, the old man quietly built an entire little world of his own. Here, he was not only the architect, but also the craftsman, and the fearless adventurer. When his boat was finally completed and set to sea, it was more than just a step across the water, it was a turning point. A shift from passively adapting to boldly mastering his fate. To me, this journey is not only inspiring but also deeply admirable. It reminds us that no matter how extreme the circumstances, as long as we still have faith, our hands, and our mind, we can create miracles. That's the end of today's video. See you again in the next episode. If something feels off, let us know in the comments so we can make every story even better. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.